It was the kind of silence that had weight. Not the peaceful quiet of a sleeping house, but the suffocating, heavy stillness of a secret kept too long. It was 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday when the call came into the Oakhaven dispatch center. The operator would later say the voice on the other end didn't sound human. It sounded hollowed out, stripped of everything but a singular, terrifying realization. "There's blood on the boathouse door," the voice whispered. "And she's not in her bed." That call was the first domino in a chain reaction that would tear the facade off the idyllic town of Oakhaven, Washington, exposing a rot that had been festering beneath the pine needles and manicured lawns for decades. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was the moment innocence died for an entire community. This is the story of the Maya Lin case, a mystery that defied logic, broke hearts, and ultimately redefined what justice looks like in the modern age. To understand the darkness of this case, you first have to understand the light that was extinguished. Maya Lin was 23 years old, an art teacher at the local elementary school who saw the world in Technicolor. Friends described her as the human equivalent of a sunrise, warm, inevitable, and impossible to ignore. She had moved to Oakhaven for the quiet, renting a small cottage near the edge of Lake Sterling, looking for inspiration for her watercolor series. She was the kind of person who saved injured birds and remembered the birthdays of the barista who served her coffee. Her Instagram was a mosaic of misty mornings, charcoal sketches, and smiling selfies with her fiancé, Leo. They were set to be married in June. Maya had no enemies. She had no debts. She had no secrets, or so everyone thought. November 14th, 1993. The Pacific Northwest fog had rolled in thick off the coast, blanketing Oakhaven in a milky haze. Maya had attended a faculty mixer earlier that evening. Witnesses remembered her laughing, wearing a distinctive crimson scarf, a splash of color against the gray evening. She left around 9:30 p.m., telling a colleague she wanted to get home to call Leo, who was away on a business trip in Seattle. She never made that call. When Leo couldn't reach her the next morning, panic set in. He drove 3 hours back to Oakhaven, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. When he arrived at the cottage, the front door was unlocked. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, buzzing with his missed calls. A half-finished cup of tea sat cold on the table. But it was the boathouse, a dilapidated structure at the edge of the property, that held the nightmare. A smear of blood, bright and arterial, stained the weathered wood of the doorframe. And in the mud, a single perfect footprint of a heavy boot that didn't belong to Maya and didn't belong to Leo. Detective Mark Silas was the first on the scene. Silas, a man etched by the job, cynical, tired, but possessing a bulldog tenacity that made him a legend in the county, took one look at the scene and knew this wasn't a robbery gone wrong. Nothing was stolen. Maya's purse was inside. This was personal. The initial investigation was a frenzy of activity. Search dogs combed the dense woods surrounding the lake. Divers plunged into the freezing waters of Lake Sterling. The community rallied, printing thousands of flyers with Maya's beaming face under the word missing. The forensic team processed the boathouse with painstaking care. The blood matched Maya's type. The boot print was a size 11, a common work boot brand sold at any hardware store in America. It was a dead end. But then a clue emerged from the digital ether. Maya's laptop revealed a series of emails sent to a generic address, TruthSeeker44. The content was cryptic. Maya seemed to be asking for advice on how to handle a sensitive situation involving a student's family. The last email, sent hours before she vanished, read, "I'm going to confront him tonight. I can't let this slide anymore." Every good mystery has its cast of characters, and Oakhaven was full of them. Leo was the obvious first suspect. Statistics always point to the partner. But Leo had an ironclad alibi. He was on a recorded conference call in Seattle at the time of the disappearance, and hotel CCTV caught him entering his room at 9 p.m. and not leaving until morning. Leo was a man in shock, pacing around the house in disbelief, clinging to the hope that Maya would walk back through the door. His love for her was evident in his every gesture, and the thought that his fiancée might have been taken from him haunted him deeply. Yet despite his grief, the truth was slipping through his fingers. Then there was Arthur Penhaligon, the elderly man who lived 2 lots down, known for watching the neighborhood through high-powered binoculars for security. He had a record for petty theft in the 80s. When police questioned him, he was agitated, sweating profusely. They found a collection of photos of Maya in his basement. The town was ready to lynch him, but the photos, while creepy, were taken from a distance in public spaces. Creepy wasn't illegal, and Arthur had arthritis so severe he could barely walk, let alone overpower a healthy young woman and dispose of a body. He wasn't their man, but his obsession with Maya would remain an unsettling clue in the case. The emails led the police to the local high school football coach, Big Jim Miller. It turned out the sensitive situation Maya was worried about involved Miller's son, whom she suspected was being abused. Maya was planning to report it. Detective Silas brought Miller in. The interrogation room was a pressure cooker. Miller was arrogant, dismissive. He admitted Maya had threatened him, but claimed he just laughed it off. "She was a meddling kid," he spat. "I didn't touch her." Without a body and with only a circumstantial motive, the DA refused to press charges. Miller walked free, smirking at the cameras. The town was furious. Justice felt like a concept that had evaporated with the fog. Months turned into years. The flyers faded on the telephone poles. The news trucks left. Leo moved away, unable to live in the house where the ghost of his future resided. Detective Silas retired, the case file of Maya Lin sitting on his desk like a paperweight on his soul. Oakhaven went back to sleep, but it was a fitful slumber. The name Maya Lin became a warning children whispered at sleepovers. The case was cold, ice cold. Fast forward to 2023. 30 years later, a group of urban explorers, YouTubers looking for content, broke into an abandoned copper mine 30 miles north of Oakhaven. Deep in one of the ventilation shafts, their flashlights caught the glint of metal. It was a car. A hatchback, rusted and covered in debris, pushed deep into a crevice that had been covered by a landslide years ago. The license plate was unmistakable. It wasn't Maya's car. It was a generic sedan registered to a shell company. But inside the trunk, preserved by the dry, cool air of the mine, was a crimson scarf. And wrapped inside the scarf was a digital voice recorder. The Oakhaven police, now led by a young, tech-savvy chief named Elena Rosa, processed the scene. They played the recorder. The audio was grainy, but the voice was Maya's. She wasn't speaking to the killer, she was recording a meeting. "I know what you're doing with the school funds," Maya's voice said, trembling but firm. "I saw the ledgers in the archives. You're funneling money into your construction contracts." A male voice laughed. It wasn't the football coach. It wasn't the creepy neighbor. It was the voice of Mayor Henderson Thorne, the man who had led the search parties, the man who had hugged Leo at the press conference and cried on camera. Thorne wasn't just the mayor. He was the owner of the construction firm that had built half the town. Maya hadn't stumbled onto abuse. She had stumbled onto a massive embezzlement scheme while looking for art supplies in the old school storage. She thought she was meeting him to discuss a clerical error. The revelation sent shockwaves through the state. Henderson Thorne was a father figure to the town. The psychology here is terrifying. It's the mask of sanity. Thorne was a sociopath who could compartmentalize his life perfectly. He could murder a young woman to protect his reputation and then go home and read a bedtime story to his granddaughter. He had killed her at the boathouse, where he had agreed to meet her secretly and used his construction connections to dispose of her body in the foundation of a new luxury hotel being poured the next day. The car in the mine was a decoy he had staged but failed to fully bury due to the landslide. He never knew she had the recorder running in her pocket. The police obtained a warrant to dig up the foundation of the hotel's parking garage. It was a massive, expensive operation, but justice demanded it. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed an anomaly. They found her. Henderson Thorne, now 75, was arrested at a charity gala. The image of him in handcuffs, still wearing his tuxedo, was the thumbnail that broke the internet. He didn't smirk like the coach. He just looked annoyed, as if this were a minor inconvenience. During the trial, the prosecution played the audio tape. The silence in the courtroom when Maya's voice filled the air was deafening. It was her final testimony. She had solved her own murder from beyond the grave. Thorne was sentenced to life without parole. He died in prison 6 months later of a heart attack. The resolution of the Maya Lin case didn't bring her back, but it lifted the fog from Oakhaven. It taught the community a hard lesson. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like the people we trust the most. Leo, now married with a child of his own, returned to Oakhaven for the memorial dedication. They planted a cherry blossom tree where the boathouse once stood. This case defines justice because it proves that the truth is stubborn. You can bury it under concrete, you can hide it in a mine, you can mask it with power and prestige, but eventually the earth will shift, the landslide will clear, and the voice of the victim will be heard. The Maya Lin case reminds us why we obsess over true crime. It's not about the gore or the fear. It's about the human desire for order in a chaotic world. It's about the hope that no matter how deep the darkness, the light will eventually find a way in.